Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here from the wonderful book Strange Monsters and Great Searches by George Laycock. This one involving the world of Chapter 5 and apparently some giant serpents. So the other day we did Chapter 4, which involved Komodo dragons. Those are otherworldly as is. This one has to do with the notion of a real life animal but just supersized. So I've done some of these snake videos in the past. In fact, one of my earliest videos involved one of the largest snakes ever documented in the world, one of those giant pythons that was somewhere out there in the forests. So it got some really good views. So in this case, I thought, why not? Let's go ahead and let's share Chapter 5. Seems like there's a lot of people interested in that phenomenon involving just gigantic anacondas out there. And so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and share all the information here from this chapter, and then once again give my own thoughts and opinions on it too. The title of the chapter is pretty simple but memorable. It's called An Unforgettable Serpent. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's share this video here, and then I give my thoughts and comments. Let me know what you guys and gals think afterward. So here's what the chapter states. Quite possibly, there will never again be a day in the life of Peninsula, Ohio, even remotely like Sunday, June 25th, 1944. At least most of the older citizens of that quiet little Ohio village hope such a day does not dawn again. In the early morning, dairy farmers were getting the milking done. The housewives were in their kitchens fixing hot breakfasts. Many of the men had forsaken church on this special day. Instead, they dressed in their field clothes and headed to town. There they joined a growing throng of men, boys, and hound dogs milling around in front of the barber shop. A look on the group was enough to frighten any peace-loving citizen. The group appeared to be a posse preparing to hunt to earth a public enemy. Their weapons ranged from handguns, shotguns, rifles, pitchforks, and even corn knives. There was much yelling and general confusion. Finally, the police chief, Art Huey, began to outline his plan. All of the men were to spread out in a line. There they would start tramping along the banks of the Cuyahoga River, being careful not to overlook ravines and gullies and other hiding places such as log piles and old junked automobiles. Hopefully one of them would spot the critter and then give the signal. Then everyone up and down the line would converge on the victim, and heaven only knows what might occur next. By this time, the object of their hunt had gathered widespread fame. As they set forth, they were trailed by assorted photographers and reporters representing newspapers from many parts of the world. The story had started when Clarence Mitchell was working on a field beside the river. Mr. Mitchell often was followed to its fields by his dogs, but on this day the dogs seemed mighty nervous. They whined and whimpered, and finally they slipped off through the fields for home, leaving their master all alone. Shortly after that, Mr. Mitchell looked up from his work. There, in plain view, was what he thought must have been the biggest snake in the world. Mr. Mitchell stood rooted to the spot. The reptile, big and round as a watermelon, was headed for the river. It stretched out across an incredible length. Around that part of Ohio, there are no truly big native snakes. The largest one Mr. Mitchell would likely see is the pilot black snake. 5 or 6 foot long and big, around as a banana would be big for its kind. But this creature, crawling in front of Mr. Mitchell, was unbelievable. This snake was 25 feet long and might have weighed more than 200 pounds. Mr. Mitchell made no effort to stop the huge snake or to engage it in combat. Understandably, I watched, he reported simply, and then while he watched, the huge snake slid down the riverbank and into the Cuyahoga. As it did so, Mr. Mitchell dropped his hoe and then raced for home. Subsequently, the snake was observed by a neighbor who was working in a field on the east side of the river. It came out of the stream and then headed eastward. Both farmers repeated their stories of what they had seen. Many believed that they had been out in the sun too long. But around Peninsula, the giant serpent continued to make its appearance. On one farm after the other, it still showed up. Those who did not see the reptile itself sometimes reported seeing its tracks. Soon most people took the story seriously. Farm wives no longer let their children go out into the fields to pick daisies. Men continuously glanced at all sides as they plowed their corn. Older boys, driving the cows in at milking time, ran them more than they usually did. Meanwhile, in town, the Great Snake was about everything that everyone could talk about. Increasingly, folks knew that they would have to protect themselves somehow against this jungle menace that had invaded northern Ohio. Such a beast simply could not be permitted to slither around the woods and the fields. The chief of police was worried that some of his neighbors, nervous because of the reports of the monster serpent, might then shoot each other by mistake. What kind of snake might have this peninsula giant have been? There are, at least in the world, 6 true giants among the snakes. All belong to the same family of reptiles. The boy died. Even herpetologists who spend their lives studying the snakes of the world have had trouble studying snakes because they arrive at the decision that if there truly is a largest. Well, they agree, however, that it must either be the anaconda or the reticulate python. Presently, the record for the reticulate python is 33 feet from nose to the tip of the tail. But there is a believable record of an anaconda that measured 37.5 feet. This leaves the anaconda, as Clifford H. Pope, an outstanding authority on the subject, has written, probably the giant among the giants. The boa constrictor, a little one among the giants, may go up to 18.5 feet long. The boa constrictor, however, is the best known of the giant serpents. It is often kept in captivity. The home of the boa is Mexico and South America. The anaconda is also a native of South America. There it stays much of the time in the warm water, moving slowly about in the dense jungle streams. The other 4 giants are all pythons native to the Old World. One often housed in zoos is the African rock python, which can grow to more than 30 feet in length. This snake is sometimes seen in the grasslands, its head lifted above the level of vegetation as it examines the countryside. It is native to most of southern Africa. Across southeastern Asia, the Indian python is frequently found in the jungles as well as the grasslands. It may grow to be 20 feet long. Meanwhile, the reticulate python crawls through the Philippine Islands, Burma, and other parts of that humid tropical region. The other monstrous snake in the lineup is also a python, the Amazigh python. Sometimes this beast, whose length may be 22 feet, departs its haunts along the stream banks to come into the villages and farms. It is a native to Australia and some of the islands of the South Pacific. All of these massive reptiles are non-poisonous. They have little need for poison. They can subdue their prey by wrapping the hapless creature in masses of snake coils and then hugging it to death. Such snakes often lurk along trails used by wild hogs, antelope, and other animals. They choose what they like from the creatures that parade by, or they may lie silently and deathly still along the limb of a giant tree that branches out over a jungle stream, ready to drop on their victims. In ambush, the giant snakes test the air for odors. They are also equipped with heat-sensitive organs, which aid them in detecting the presence of warm-blooded creatures. When hungry, the giant snake grabs its victim first with its jaws, the teeth curved backward. The harder the victim pulls to escape, the more deeply it is impaled, and the more securely it is held. Then the snake quickly brings coils of its massive body around the animal, and the opportunities to escape at this point are slight. Some believe these huge constrictors break a multitude of bones in their victims' bodies as they hold them. This is not the case. These big snakes do not squeeze their prey with great force. With their bulky coils wrapped around the struggling creature, they just hold on. Each time the prey exhales, the snake takes up the slack, making it impossible for the victim to expand and then draw in fresh supplies of oxygen. Afterwards, it soon suffocates. Strangely, these reptiles are capable of eating animals even larger around than their own bodies. The jaws are flexible and loosely connected. They can adjust to the situation and then spread around the larger prey. The swallowing process may be a slow one, though. Bit by bit, the reptile inches forward, stretching its own body over that of its victim. It pulls itself onto the prey, somewhat as a person might force an elastic stocking onto a leg. The snake may enter an enclosure, capture, and then consume a pig or calf, then find that it is too bulky to escape through the opening by which it entered. How big an animal can a big snake swallow? There's one report from South Africa of a python 16 feet long swallowing an impala weighing 130 pounds. In South America, an anaconda once consumed a 5-foot caiman, an alligator like reptile. Meanwhile, one Indian python is credited with making the main course of an adult leopard. The snake is said to have suffered some scratches in the process, which serves him right. On record also are authentic cases of reticulate pythons consuming people. 4 Burmese hunters once went into the jungle in pursuit of game. Along the trail, they became separated from each other. When they reassembled, there was not 4, but 3. This alarmed the remaining 3, and they straightway set forth, searching for their missing friend. First, they found his sandals beside the trail. The sandals looked as if their owner had been lifted out of them. Soon the 3 men found a trail of broken vegetation, and then, resting in the shadows beside the trail, they found a python at least 20 feet long. Near its middle, the great serpent's body was suspiciously bulky. The beast was slain upon the spot, and a post-mortem was soon performed, and the lost hunter had been found, but somewhat late. It would, however, be unfair to the giant snakes to imply that they often seek humans for their prey. They have distinct preferences for other warm-blooded species. In fairness, it should be noted that people also eat pythons. All of this, however, is lost on people who find they have a giant reptile in their neighborhood. Around Long Beach, California, some years ago, there was instant pandemonium when word spread that the 28-foot-long python had escaped from a traveling carnival. The reptile was soon captured near the beach. That put an early end to the possibility of a scene such as the natives of Peninsula, Ohio, the ones that acted at the time of their great snake hunt. Every few days, the snake would be seen again around the northern Ohio community. It would then slide into the brush and then out of sight. By the time a posse could be organized and help reach the site, the nervous hunters would find only mashed down grass and more big tracks, and this led to the big Sunday hunt in late June. Nobody recalls for certain how many men and boys gathered to search for the serpent. The telephone operator was alerted to pass the word if anyone should call in a report of the monster. The local fire station was expected to sound 3 blasts of the siren on top of the town hall. The siren sounded about noon. Just about everyone who had not already gone out on the hunt now began to join the chase. They didn't know it then, but the caller had spread a false alarm. They searched every ravine and kicked every brush pile. They looked into the branches of trees over the river. They poked into holes, but all day there was no sign of the Peninsula python. Everyone went home tired that night, and no one had been shot. Police Chief Art Huey let out a sigh of relief. Perhaps so did the Peninsula python. Where did the monster reptile come from? How did it get free halfway around the world from its native land? Folks in the northern Ohio thought about that quite a bit. They recalled that day that a carnival truck went out of control down by the cemetery. Everything that was inside it had spread over an acre or more. One of the things in it was believed to have been a giant python. By autumn, the python had vanished. Naturalists from Cleveland and from other cities speculated that it might have holed up for winter along the banks of the Cuyahoga and then failed to survive the frigid northern Ohio weather. And then that's it. That's everything associated with Chapter 5 of the book Strange Monsters and Great Searches by George Laycock. So again, let's talk about that here. So again, Chapter 5 has to do with the title An Unforgettable Serpent. It's about giant serpents, giant anacondas or pythons. And I like how the chapter went into several details as to the variations of them. But it started off with a bang, or at least almost a bang, when it came to that hunt over there in Peninsula, Ohio on Sunday, June 25th, 1944. So how about that? Almost 80 years to the day when it comes to this hunt. Anyone there from Peninsula, Ohio, by the way? Anybody know more information about this legendary hunt or about the creature associated with it? Let me know, post it in the comments. But apparently there was a giant anaconda / python that was roaming about that area, including the banks of the Cuyahoga River. It was apparently over 25 feet long, may have been even longer, just based on ill sightings. Like, in other words, you couldn't get an exact sighting of it because it's not going to stretch itself out for you. Instead, you just saw parts of it, and so people estimated for it to be 25 feet long. But there it was, being witnessed first by a guy by the name of Mr. Mitchell, and then shortly afterward, other farmers, other citizens, even the police chief and others started to worry about it because it started to appear more and more. But it was very elusive. Did y'all get that? The idea that this thing is almost intelligent. It's almost like it knew when it was seen, and then it would just slither away into a brush, and then it would disappear for all intents and purposes. Even as slow as it moved, it was still able to outmaneuver all these people that were hunting for it at the same time. And then there was information about some other records associated with the lengths of pythons and other large snakes. It was interesting to read that the record at the time is 33 feet long. I'm trying to remember that video that I did years back involving that giant anaconda. I think it was near 50 feet. That was the one that was legendary. Like the guy saw it from a helicopter, and then it started moving upwards. Like it started almost being on its quote unquote hind legs. Like it basically just stretched itself up, almost reaching the helicopter itself. I remember that with regards to that video. So not quite as long. I thought I read somewhere that snakes can essentially keep growing forever. They're almost like sharks. The idea is that the longer they live, the longer they become, the bigger they become. And it's only because of death, not death from like natural causes, but death from being killed, that stops them from reaching even longer strength. There's ideas that sharks are out there in the world that are much larger that we know of, but there's no way to find them because the ocean is so big. But they are apparently very massive, far massive than we ever knew, because they're so old. They just continue to grow and grow. And so I thought I read somewhere that snakes are the same way too, that they can apparently just keep on growing forever as long as they continue living. So somewhere out there is a record holder when it comes to the snakes, and then as far as those giant pythons and so on. It was interesting to read too that the snakes don't actually break bones. They essentially just wrap around their victim, suffocate them, and then when the victim lets out any breath, because all the animals that it's suffocating are basically breathing, then it starts wrapping even tighter. It's like it can sense when breath is being let out, and when that happens, then it's wrapping tighter so that way they cannot inhale but can only keep exhaling. What a horrible way to go. And then of course there was some stories there about some people actually being hunted and also being consumed by the snakes. That I can believe. It has happened. I've read stories about it. Every now and then I might feature some in the gruesome and grotesque videos, but they're out there. It does happen. The snakes, even though they don't prefer humans per se, they do find one and then they make a meal out of it after they suffocate the poor human to death. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information associated with this strange monster, this idea that there's giant snakes, even larger ones out there that could be even more record holders. Let me know what you guys and gals think about this chapter. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.